moving on now to the Fatal Fury card, I believe is the name, right? I tend to forget the name of these Turkey Ala Sheikh cards, but Teofimo Lopez, Arnold Barboza, Devin Haney, Jose Ramirez, Rolly Romero, Ryan Garcia. It's happening this weekend. I think we may have briefly spoke about which fight you're looking forward to the most, but let me know right now that as we get closer to the fight, has that changed?
It kind of changed because initially I was really looking forward to the Barboza and Teofimo fight, but now I'm really drawing my attention more to the Devin Haney and Ramirez fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fight now I'm more interested in. So it has changed. What about you?
No, I agree. That's the one. And for me, all right, I'm going to be completely honest. I think Devin Haney should win this fight. Just complete honesty.
Same here.
But I see things, and maybe it's just them selling the fight and hyping me up. I see things in where Ramirez can give him trouble, and I'm interested to see, coming off of the Ryan loss, how he will deal with those potential things that can give him trouble. Ramirez is a taller guy, so decent arm length. When he rehydrates, I think he's going to be a decent size as well. Devin Haney's probably going to be a little bigger, but I think Ramirez is going to rehydrate good enough where he's just not going to be bullied in the ring. He has a decent left hook. Obviously, it's not the speed and veracity of Ryan's left hook, but decent left hook, high volume, and he'll just keep coming after you. So I want to see when he touches Devin Haney's chin, what's the reaction? You know what I mean? So there's just several components from Jose Ramirez that make this fight interesting to me. Then Robert Garcia is on record of saying Jose is a big guy, so he's going to feel strong if they fight at 147. Initially, this fight was at a catchweight 144.
Now I'm doing the catchweight, and now this is my first fight, towards the welterweight division.
Now it's sounding like it's at 147, and
this is gonna be my first fight at 147, and
it's not definitive. I'm confused because I don't know the timing of these interviews.
Right, like Devin Haney first says is at a catchweight, and then he said it during the Ring magazine interview, and then of course now with the Showbiz interview, now he's saying it's at 147 pounds. So it's kind of like, and so, Ramirez also said it was at 147. So
I think it's gonna be a welterweight. I think it just makes sense, right? Because if Ryan wins and he wins, they're gonna fight at welterweight. And Devin said he wants to progressively go to the weights. Like, bro, you're big enough. We all know that you're big enough. You know what I mean? So might as well just go straight to welterweight instead of 144. So I'm probably still most excited for that fight. I would have thought the most entertaining back and forth would have been Ryan and Rolly, but Rolly's been kind of quiet. Not really sure why. So I just think, like, banter-wise, Tio and Barboza has been the most interesting one. So let's take a little bit of time to talk about that fight. They were supposed to do the face-off, and Tio didn't come face-to-face with Barboza. Do you think he was afraid that Barboza was going to try to slap him back?
Probably. He probably was like, I could just kill two birds with one stone by just acting like a goddamn fool. And also, like, I don't got to deal with retaliation, Yeah. He's gonna get beat on stage. He's like, nah, I'm cool with that. I ain't trying to deal with that.
So tell me a little bit about your opinion on this fight. So Barboza coming off a couple of good wins, right? He beat Jose Ramirez, who's on this card. He beat Jack Catterall, who I think
sorry to cut you off, but are we both on the same page here that we believe Tio will win this fight?
No.
Oh, so you got Barboza.
I got Barboza. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So go ahead.
Yeah. So Barboza coming off of two good wins. Jose Ramirez, Jack Catterall. I think we both have high regard for Jack Catterall at 140. We actually thought he potentially could have competed maybe for titles, or maybe just threw a fork in the road for some of the popular guys.
Yeah.
But Barboza, right? When you watch him, he doesn't necessarily jump off your screen. He's not the biggest puncher. Decent power, not the biggest puncher, not the fastest, but you just kind of blurted out that you have Tio. So tell me why you have Tio over Barboza in this one.
To be honest, like, Barboza, he's a good sound fighter. He can fight someone the back foot. With the fight he did with Ramirez, you can kind of see he was able to box, but I feel like Tio's just a step ahead. in the skills department, but also in terms of the physicals, I don't see Barboza being like significantly bigger fighter, significantly bigger puncher. So I don't see anything that he has is going to offset what Teo has. It really comes down to what Teo's going to bring to the table, right? What version of Teo is going to show up in this fight? If Teo shows up how he normally shows up, I feel like he's just going to be, just too good for Barboza, right? I feel like he's going to be able to make Barboza hit a lot more. His counter-punching ability is just more superior to Barboza. His timing is going to be better. It's just a matter of just how Teo show up, really, right? I feel like Barboza's probably going to be in there, try to make it rough at times, right? But I'm going to bank on Teo really showing up and doing what he has to win. So that's why I got Teo.
Yeah. So what I like about Barboza is the simplicity of his game, right? And I think that gives Teo trouble. Kambosos not very flashy fighter, doesn't do too much crazy things. Good counter puncher, but
I feel like Kambosos was a little, I don't know. I feel like he was a anomaly though, in a way. But you are right though. I'll give you that.
I hear you. I hear you. Then you have Sandor Martin, right? Good counter puncher, but also not too crazy. But I think the thing about Sandor and Kambosos, they both weren't really coming after Teo, right? We look at guys like Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor was coming after Teo, and Teo really thrives on that back foot when you're overly aggressive looking for him. His counter ability, as you mentioned, right? So I think when Teo actually has to do the opposite and come get you, a la Jermaine Ortiz, which I think Jermaine Ortiz won that fight, I think it throws Teo off his game a bit. Now, Barboza, I don't think is going to aggressively go after Teo. I think Teo's going to have to find him a bit. I think he'll stand his ground. He won't be in complete retreat, but I don't think he'll be aggressively walking Teo down unless he hurts him, So I think that kind of gives us a different version of Teo, if it's not just the, fighting off his back foot. I think Teo actually fights better off his back foot than his front foot.
Yeah. So 100%. 100%. And I think so I guess that's probably where we disagree, because I feel like there's going to be moments where he's going to try to fight in the back foot, but I feel like Barboza's going to go looking for Teo for majority of the fight, and that's what I feel like he's going to have trouble with. But go ahead.
And I also think, Barboza keeps his shots nice and tight. He isn't trying to do too much. He isn't trying to, beat anybody else, right? So, and I think kind of simple 1s, 1-2s. I don't think he's throwing any crazy combinations, leaving himself open. Yes, he will be countered at some point in time in this fight. It's boxing.
Yeah.
But I think he's a good, strong, sound fighter. I think he's gonna fight behind the jab, put some pressure on Teo when he needs to, but I don't think he's gonna always be in Teo's face. I think Teo's gonna have to come find him a bit, and I think it's gonna ruffle Teo a little bit. I think we're gonna get one of those, Teo performances where people are kind of just like, you know what I mean? Because it almost feels like it's every other fight, right? But I mean, I think it's actually kind of really skewed. I think the Loma performance was great. The Josh Taylor performance was great, but there's a lot of stinkers in between.
Yeah, especially after the like Sandor Martin, Kambosos, Sandor Martin, and
and Ortiz. Josh Taylor, I don't really think he's had a impressive 140 performance.
Yeah, he hasn't had. And he's for Ortiz. He's for Ortiz and Sandor Martin. Those are the only other two.
He has more fights at 140 than that as well. I don't know the names right now. Josh Taylor.
You know what you're thinking of? You're probably thinking of
Claggett, the other guy that wasn't impressive to me.
Yeah, you're thinking about Claggett. Okay.
Yeah. Claggett wasn't impressive. The scorecards were wide, but if you watched it, wasn't an impressive performance. So I just think at 140. He was hurting Josh Taylor, but as we see with guys like Chris Eubanks Jr., if you're potentially too depleted, like we start to see other things happen in your game, right? So he was hurting Josh Taylor, but he has one stoppage at 140. So I'm not saying the power hasn't translated, but these guys are a little bigger. They're taking the shots a little better. All in all, I got Arnold Barboza Jr. in this one. I think this is the upset to look out for.
Okay. That's gonna be interesting to see. So you got, Barboza. I got Teo. So I guess that moves us to, the next bout, right? Which we both are probably the most interested in, which is Devin the Dream Haney versus Ramirez. What are your thoughts initially, I guess, going into the fight? How do you see that fight going, and who ultimately wins that bout?
I think it's going to be pretty boring, mostly, and boring in the sense of I think Ramirez is a little bit too slow.
Okay.
I think Haney is going to be able to touch him, move, touch him, move, and I think he's going to kind of be able to rinse and repeat that cycle to a unanimous decision win. I can see us having a little bit of drama, like I said, because Jose is aggressive. He's going to come after him. He has good size, so it's not like when Campos is coming after you, you could just like get him off of you. I think so. I think there's going to be a little bit of wrestling, and Ramirez might get some good shots off there. But overall, I think Devin's just a bit too fast, bit too talented. So I got Devin unanimous decision in that one. But I think it's a good fight. As Devin said, it's not a Josh Padley. So, but I think Devin wins that one pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I do think Devin wins. I think it's going to be a unanimous decision as well. It should be. I'm really curious to see when he gets hit, especially when he gets hit with big shots, how he responds.
Mm-hmm.
But if I think about what I believe how he would respond, I think he's going to be able to weather the storm, and I wouldn't be surprised if he hurts Ramirez, in this fight. I really feel like, I'm going to take, I'm going to give him another chance. I'm going to take what him and his camp been saying in terms of them working on certain things to the T. I'm going to take that as, face value, right? And assume that to be true. And I think, he's going to come out to kind of make a statement. And I do think he's going to look to box at first, but I think once he starts getting comfortable, he starts getting the rhythm, I think he's going to look to kind of like really like hurt Ramirez at certain points in the fight for sure. I could even see him dropping Ramirez, so, but I haven't won a unanimous. Okay, I could see him dropping Ramirez. I'm not even going to lie. I could potentially see that, but not no TKO. Absolutely.
Okay. I thought you was going as far as you can see him stopping Ramirez.
Nah.
Yeah.
I'm not going that far.
I think Ramirez is a good fight. It makes sense. Another person I would have liked to see him fight is like a Josh Taylor kind of guy who moved up to welterweight as well. I just want to see a guy who's going to put some pressure on Haney just to see how he deals with that pressure. Because as the guy who we're going to talk about next, I think after, like what happened to him, sometimes people get gun shy. Sometimes people chins don't hold up the same anymore. So I'm just kind of just curious. But I think Ramirez is a good test. If someone's going to put pressure, someone's going to touch you, and we're going to see how you react to those punches, right? Are you going to get flashbacks, or are you going to be able to stand there in the pocket and say, nah, I got this?
Yeah. Agreed. So we got that. We both agree Devin Haney should win this fight, unanimous decision, which, leads us to our main event, right? Two, I would say, quote unquote, I don't want to say controversial stars, right? But two stars that kind of had their own journeys, and Rich really started from a sparring video, right? From years back, where Rolly actually got the best of Ryan Garcia in that sparring footage specifically. Now, they, of course, at the time, they were fighting at two different weights. They were pretty young. They were still amateurs at the time. Their careers definitely took, two different trajectories, right? We have Ryan, his really only loss is against Tank Davis. And then we have Rolly, who has been losing to Pitbull Cruz. He lost to Tank Davis. But, Rolly's career is really going downhill. And I think, going into this fight, he do got a lot on his plate. But before I kind of go on and give you my prediction, what do you think about the two fight? Do you think there's going to be the fight that we think it's going to be in terms of fireworks, someone getting stopped, or do you think we're going to be disappointed?
I predict fireworks. I predict someone getting stopped. I think my only hesitation with this fight is Rolly was saying he was depleted at 135. He said quickly he was depleted at 140. He said 147 is the weight for him. People like Tank have been on record of saying how strong this guy is, how hard he punches. So at 147, is he going to be even more strong, punching even harder? The thing I've been saying about Rolly is Ismael Salas, right? World-renowned trainer, right? And if you kind of watch the workout, you see Rolly kind of being more technically maybe sound in his approach and how his workouts look. but is Rolly more effective being a little wild under the training of Bullet? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So is
Absolutely.
that kind of being wild and unorthodox? You know, if you're kind of dealing with someone, you know, if you're a boxer, you're so used to people doing, you know, what they should do. Now, when you fight someone who's awkward and they're kind of like breaking the norm and convention, it kind of throws you off, right? Because like you tend to pull your hand back to your face, expecting, you know what I mean? But what if someone's throwing like awkward punches and then, you know, just like your muscle memory tells you to do this, but this person is awkward and it kind of throws you off until you kind of get their rhythm. You know what I mean? So I think that helped Rolly find success. Him being more conventional seems to have been slowing him down. Also, just kind of weird, but it just seems like his chin never recovered from the Tank thing.
Yeah, he's definitely a little chinny, which is a thing in boxing. You know, when someone gets knocked out and they get back into fights, they're more susceptible to punches. Um, you know, he's putting that up to or chalking that up to being weight drained. I think it's more than that, but also with the trainer change as well. I think with his new trainer and his new program, I think it's not complementing his strengths. I think it's just trying to conform who he is into someone else, which doesn't work well, right? Especially if you've been fighting a certain way for years on end, and then now you got to really go back and try to change that. It's going to disrupt. You're going to have malfunctions in the ring, right? You're going to want instinctually to throw punches a certain way, but then you're like, nah, let me focus on what I've been learning, right? Like even like you throwing a punch awkwardly that you had success throwing. Now you're throwing it the right way. People can predict it now, right? Now you got to, you know, figure out, okay, how do I move? And sometimes you instinctually want to move one way, but what you've been taught to do in the ring, you want to do that way. Now it's a conflict, and now you're getting caught with punches that you don't see because of the conflict there. So I think, you know, that's also a big part of it as well, which I can see Ryan stopping Rolly, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
You know?
So I mean, that's just what I'm looking out for. I think Rolly is going to be stronger, but I think he's going to try to wrestle Ryan some and, you know, try to get some work off out of the clinch. I think he's going to be very strong. I think you're going to probably see in the early rounds Ryan kind of stumbling around the ring, not off of punches, but just off of like awkward kind of physical interactions. But I do think Rolly's going to kind of like fall in love with his strength and try to throw one of those ferocious combos, open himself up. And I think the left hook will touch him, and I think it'll be a 10 count.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Well said.
Yeah, I can see him doing one of these, and in the midst of one of those, that left hand's gonna be so fast. I think it's gonna put him down, because here's the thing: the counterpart to Rolly being stronger and more replenished at 147. Say the same thing for Ryan.
Yeah.
And then,
100%.
you know, like I've never seen Ryan in person, but people are saying he's big in person, right? Even though people are kind of like playing both sides, like, because I forgot who was it? Maybe it was Mike Coppinger, but he was basically saying, like, yo, Devin, like this dude was big. Like I saw him, like he was big. And everybody knows Devin Haney is big. Like Ryan didn't look much bigger than Devin Haney on fight night. They looked comparable in size. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there wasn't like it wasn't like a major difference. No.
Yeah, and then Ryan said himself, he's like, Devin's replenishing the 165, 170. Like guys notice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think Ryan's gonna be stronger. I think, you know, we can see Rolly have some success early on, not landing anything too significant, but just being the more physical fighter. But I think the left hook's gonna touch him. I think it's gonna put him down. So he just never completely recovered from that Tank fight. He's been chinny. He kind of walks around with his chin up. He always looks like he smells something weird. He always seems out of it. You know,
Yeah.
like he always seems like a deer in headlights. And I just think the left hook is just gonna, you know, put him to sleep.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think he'll make the 10 count. I think that'll be it. But more power to Rolly.
Yeah, you know, he's boxing's #1 comedian for sure. But you know, it's gonna be a fantastic day of boxing, and you know, looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You know, obviously they're setting up the rematch between Haney and Ryan if they're both successful. Tio is still fighting at 140, but do you think Tio needs to move up to 147 and find himself in that mix at all between the three of them? Do you think he should fight the winner of that at 147? He's been talking about going to 147 to fight Boots. I'd rather him not fight Boots.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I would like Tio to stay at 140. It seems like he's smaller of the two, and I think, you know, he's not like he's dominating 140. I think you know, it'll work well for him. Maybe down the line he could fight a Keyshawn Davis if Keyshawn Davis moves up. I think 140 is best division for him. Fight Richardson Hitchens. You know, there's still fights for him to make down there. You know, if he fights at 147, he's just kind of just following them and following their lead, kind of, you know. I don't see no reason for him to move up. You know?
Yeah. The fight I really want to see is I want to see Tio versus Subriel. Subriel obviously has to get past Puello, but as I mentioned earlier in this video, Tio flourishes on the back foot when guys are just coming after him, and Subriel is just going to come after him.
Yeah.
And I just want to see, because Tio has some crack. I just want to see how Subriel reacts to those punches. He probably can take, but I just think it's an interesting dynamic. But yeah, I'm good with Tio staying at 140. Tio and Ryan's an interesting fight to me. Tio and Devin's an interesting fight to me. So that's why, you know, I'm just interested in some of those fights. But so to recap, you got Tio, I got Barboza. Other than that, we got Haney and Garcia. So it looks like the rematch is on the horizon. Make sure you guys jump in the comment section. Tell us, what do you think? Who do you have winning those fights? Do you think the rematch is imminent? Are we overlooking anybody? Who's the sleeper for the night? Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. 2 cents short of $1, and we out. See you on fight night.